Hello, we're back. I'm thinking maybe I'll run through my tips and tricks, and then people who have questions can stick around. I'm going to try to say the general things first and then see if people have specific questions. I'm going to start with just a few things that I would do that help. And these are random. I didn't put these in any particular order. One, when you're doing a sound check, turn everything on. If you're checking line by line, you're checking microphone by microphone. If I turn on the first microphone and everything sounds great, if I turn it off and then turn on the second one and everything sounds great, I turn off the second one, turn on the third one, everything sounds great, turn on the fourth, da, da, da. And then the show starts, I turn them all on and I get a bunch of feedback because when all the microphones are on, they feed each other. So when you're doing your sound check, it's a good idea for everything to be on. And check your levels with everything on, not one at a time. If you're just technically checking to see if the microphone works, then you should only turn that one on. But once you're checking who needs to be loud, who needs to be soft, how do we do the EQ, blah, 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 everything should be on. The monitors should be on, the speakers should be on, and that way, and it should be louder, like the main level, not the monitors so much, but the main level that goes to the audience of the speakers should be, my personal recommendation, louder than you think it should be. If you do a comfortable sound check in an empty room and then 300 people walk in and they're all wearing sweaters, you will suddenly need to turn up the volume because they absorb the sound. So when you do your sound check in an empty room, you want problems. That's one of the key issues. You want problems. You want them to happen during the sound check. If they don't happen during the sound check and then happen later, you're in trouble. So put the volume higher than you want it to be. It should sound a little too loud. And then see if there's feedback. And then turn it back down so you're comfortable once you're done doing the sound check. And then when everyone walks in, you're probably going to find yourself turning it up again. Okay, so sound checks should be with everything on and with the volume a little louder than the comfort zone.
The only thing
Uh,
I would like to add to that, Asaf, is
yeah,
as an evening winds down, you want to go in the other, you may want to go in the other direction to be alert to that.
to turn it down, but that's when everybody's in the room.
Well, I mean, right. You have the sound check, then you have everybody in the room at max population, and then as the evening goes on, maybe there are 10 people left at the end of the evening, and all of them have taken their sweaters off. So just
Right.
be alert to that curve.
Right, right. I would say one thing that plays to your advantage at that moment is that your intuition will work. So when people start to leave, the music will start to sound too loud, and so you can go with your intuition and just turn it down. Before the show, you want to go against your intuition and make it a little bit too loud in order. You want to go counterintuitive in order to find the problems. Okay? Um, Feedback is more often because of monitors than because of speakers, because the monitors are right next to the musicians, the speakers are way out there. So if you've got feedback, it's probably because of a problem on the stage. It's less likely to be because of the speakers. But I can't say much more than that because I don't want to talk for hours without solving much. Um, if you're looking for feedback, check if the monitors are too loud, check if a musician is too close to the monitor, check if one of the microphones, sometimes somebody leaves a microphone and no one's using it and it just flops, but it happens to flop right next to the monitor and you get feedback. Anything can happen. Look for problems between the mics and the monitors first. Um, okay, if you don't have time and you need a 5-minute mix, here's what you do in a nutshell. Make sure everything works, top priority. Check mic by mic, one at a time, make sure they all work. Make sure the monitors work, although for the most part, leave them off. Let the band play one song and then ask them what they couldn't hear and then turn things up. Don't turn everything up to start. Um, da, 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 da. When you're doing a quick mix, work with priorities. And this applies even when you're doing a slow mix. Priorities are very important and priorities are very specific to the style. If I was doing electronic music at a party, I want to hear a lot of drums, second priority bass, third priority, melody, harmony, stuff like that. But drums are actually pretty much the most important thing. If I'm doing folk dancing, my opinion is that the most important thing is the melody, closely followed by the drums. And third is everyone else, almost literally everyone else. And so If you don't have time for a mix, or if you're wondering what should be louder, make sure you can hear the melody, whether that's the singer or you know, uh, the violin player, whatever it is, melody, and soon to be followed by the drums. The drums often don't even need a microphone because they're loud. They don't even need to be amplified, but you want to hear the drums. So if I need to do a quick mix and I don't have time, what I do is I turn the singer up and then I put everybody else like here at about the same level. And then I just let them go. I let them start to play, and as they're playing, I'll say, okay, well, I need a little less singer, and I need a little more violin, or whatever. But the starting point is lots of singer, everyone else pretty low, and then just let them run and see how it goes. Having priorities really helps sort things out, because you know you want to hear the singer, everything else, my God, no one's going to complain. They will complain if they can't hear the singer. So having priorities helps. Um, when you're dealing with feedback, the quickest solution is to turn everything off. And the second quickest solution is to turn off the person who's causing the feedback, but that can be very hard to figure out. The third is to turn off only the frequency that's feeding back. That takes some time. But basically, quick solutions for feedback is to turn down the volume, either on whoever's causing it, or if you have no choice, turn the whole volume down until the feedback ends, and then look for a sweet spot where there's no more feedback, or something to that effect. Problems in general, any kind of problems, there's a lot of noise, or there's feedback, or a microphone's not working, or there's all this crazy going on and you don't know where it's coming from. The first question you should ask yourself when you have a problem in real time is it worth fixing? You want to have a fallback plan, and you want to assume that fixing a problem is going to take an average of about 10 or 15 minutes. If you can stop the show for 10 or 15 minutes and it's worth it because the problem is such a big deal that you have to fix it, go ahead, stop the show. Everyone's going to have to wait while you look for the problem. And that's if you know what you're doing. If you know what you're doing, it will easily take 10 or 15 minutes to solve a problem. If you don't know what you're doing, it take much longer than that. And so the best thing to do is have a fallback plan. Like if the DI doesn't work, give them a microphone. If this microphone doesn't work, give them a different microphone. Don't try to solve the problem unless it's really worth it. If this speaker sounds terrible, turn it off. Work with one speaker instead of two. Save yourself the trouble of making everyone wait, because it takes time to solve problems. I can talk about how to find problems, but in a nutshell, you just go bit by bit. I mean, I don't know if I should get into that because that's going to be a long explanation. You go one by one. Is it connected? Is the gain right? Is the EQ right? You just go down the line. Go down from top to bottom. Go down the channel. Check everything and see if everything looks good. That's basically how you find problems. Like I was telling Sherry, you go down the chain. You look at what component at a time. You go systematically. You don't skip. And if everything looks good in the first one, look at the second one. Everything looks good in the second one, go to the third one. If everything looks good all the way down the line, order a pizza. I mean, figure something out. But going down the line is usually the way to solve problems. Other things have already been said, and thank you for everyone who made suggestions and asked questions. Louder is not necessarily better. We have a tendency to believe automatically that if something is louder, then it sounds good. I could turn up the EQ and oh, that sounds really great. You know what? It doesn't. It's just louder. If everything gets louder, then it gets messy. Beware of assuming that loud is good. You just want it to sound clean and balanced and prioritized. You want the singer to be loud enough. You don't necessarily want everyone to be loud enough. Work gently with a mixer, the same way as you would work with a steering wheel. You don't do sharp turns. Go slow. Okay, you're going to avoid a lot of problems by going slow. If you can't hear someone, we always have a tendency to, oh, I can't hear him. And then something. So go slow, and if it didn't solve the problem, make sure you put it back on 0 before you go somewhere else. Because if I turn this to 100 and I still can't hear anything, and then I go look, oh, it was off, on, boom, and then I get this explosion. So go slow and keep track of what you're doing. Turn it down if you're going somewhere else. Okay. That's what, I made a quick list of things that I could think of for tips and tricks, battlefield tactics. That's what I've got. At this point, That's what I've thought of. I'm sure that there are people here who know, who can make more suggestions, and I also know that people want to ask questions, so let's do questions.
Okay, I have a very simple 6-channel system where the mixing board and the amplifier are one unit, and there's not a lot of adjusting I can do. I can adjust high, low, and volume for each individual channel. There's no EQ that I can figure out anyway. And so one of the things that I encounter is a lot of times there's conditions in the room that cause noise. For example, if a refrigerator there's a loud refrigerator in the back of the room, suddenly we have a hum. Or, I mean, some of this stuff I've figured out, wires crossing in the wrong way. And so if you could talk in general, for those of us who don't have the advantage of being able to just chop off these frequencies, how can we reduce the noise in the room?
Yeah, okay. Well, that could be a long, there's so many different things that can cause noise. And so I'll try to talk about some of the more common ones. Um, and I hope that that will help. Um, when you work in sound engineering for a long time, and you're in shape, you get used to recognizing noises. There's hums, there's feedback, there's buzzes, there's big knocks, and every noise means something. Um, there's just so many different possibilities, and so I'm not going to try to talk about I'm just going to randomly throw out the common ones. One of the most common things that can happen is if we are using more than one electrical socket at the same time in order to build our system. So let's say we have a big room the size of this screen. We have a mixer here, a speaker here, a microphone here, who knows what there. We plug one of them into this side. We plug one of them into, there's another socket here. Let's use this socket. Let's use this socket. Let's use that. Everybody's plugged into a different place. Without getting into too much detail, all those different electrical fields are not going to agree with each other, and you're going to get, it's because of the ground, but you're going to get some hum and noise, or at least you might. One of the things that can happen is that you'll start to get a hum, like a in the system. And in order to avoid that, you want to use the same socket for your entire system. In 99 out of 100 cases, you don't have to worry about overloading. In order to overload a system, you would have to be doing something for at least hundreds, if not 1,000 people. That's the kind of size show that uses so much power that you can't put it on one simple 15 amp socket. 15 amps, I have done shows for 1,000 people on one 15 amp socket with no problem. It's more than enough in almost every case. So you can usually, by using extension cords, and of course you don't want to plug an extender into an extender, you want to be careful, you don't want to cause a fire, but you want to try to use the same socket for the entire system, and you will have a lot less noise. Of course, any kind of noise like a refrigerator that's just working and causing noise, you're gonna have to turn off the refrigerator. You can try to point microphones away from sources of noise so that they're picking up only the person who's talking, and maybe if the refrigerator's here, you'll have less issues. But if the audience is next to the refrigerator, you're hopeless. I mean, if there are things in the room that are causing noise, then whatever you can do to get rid of them, it's definitely going to help. Feedback.
A related question to this discussion.
Yeah.
This is Dan. So when I plugged my powered speakers into a power strip into an outlet in the same socket that you're talking about, and that often causes hum. And when I talked to Mackie Tech Support, they said, don't plug it into the power strip, plug it directly into the outlet. And that seemed to work.
Right.
Do you know why? I never quite understood the reasoning behind that.
I'd have to have a conversation with your power strip, but the most likely scenario is that the power strip had a connection issue, which caused a hum. A lot of hums are caused by connection issues. It can be very annoying because it could be one little cable, one XLR or one power cable somewhere in this mess of 300 that we're using tonight. One of them is bad, and I've got a hum in all the speakers are humming. And until I find that one cable, I'm not going to get rid of the hum. But yeah, that would be my first guess, is that the power strip was just old. Theoretically, you should be able to use a good power strip, assuming you're not overloading it, assuming it's, in good shape, and all that kind of thing. Sometimes you're working in a building that the building is so old that the electricity in the building is old and dirty, and you're gonna get hums. Um, anyway, yeah, there is so many like case per case things with this kind of question that it's going to be really hard to get to all of them. Um, Maybe Gerard, if more things come to mind, what are like the more common reasons why we have noise? Oh, wireless. If you're using anything wireless, you are taking more risks because just like a phone, you get that, oh, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Wireless systems, if you have a wireless microphone, you might have more problems. If you don't need a wireless, I always ask myself, is it worth it? Do you have a singer, like for example, storytelling festival, where you have someone on the stage who is moving and doing dragons and flying and juggling and whatever. They can't use a cabled microphone. It's not that they can't, but it will take away 90% of their performance. That's worth using a wireless microphone. It's worth the trouble. But if you have a five-piece ensemble on your stage who are all standing in one place and playing their instruments, don't use wireless. You're just asking for trouble. You're gonna get, if, for example, if the stage is here and the antennas and the mixer are here and you're picking up those wireless from the other end of the hall and somebody turns on their cell phone in the middle of the room, you're gonna hear a dolphin in the speaker. It's gonna be like these weird sounds because cell phones and wireless mics work on the same frequencies and they clash. So you're just asking for trouble with wireless systems. If it's not worth it, don't go there. Yeah, I mean, I think that if you don't have specific examples of problems that you've encountered, I think that I will leave it at that. The best answer I can give you is bring someone who will show you one time what the problems are, and after that, you will have less problems. Because from there, you will know what to do. You just need somebody one time. Shana?
Okay, so other drummers could answer this too. I agree with you about I want to use a wired mic for various reasons, but when you're playing tupon and you're singing, do people have any it's hard to be near the mic and with this big drum. So just if anybody has any comment
Like,
about
how
that.
do you amplify your voice without amplifying the drum?
It's to even stand with your mouth close to a mic when you have this big drum on you.
Right, okay. Well, I mean,
You have to kind of go like that, and it's
yeah,
awkward.
okay, so here's my mic stand. If I've got this big drum, I can mess with, oh, by the way, important with microphones. If you want your microphone to last, never force it. Always open,
Right.
move, and close. I know it's really hard to do that, especially when you're stressed, but your microphone will last that way. It's not meant to be forced. If I put it like this, with the stand coming from the side, I should be able to use a top-on. There's a lot of trial and error in that. You could give them a lavalier, give them a little
Yeah.
Madonna kind of thing, and yeah, it's the kind of thing where you just have to look at what you have and do the best you
Yeah.
can. Okay, so I saw Paul. Paul?
So we often don't have a choice of where we play in a room, and they'll set us up. So we did a gig a little while ago where they put us in the corner with two concrete walls on either side of us. And as you could imagine, it was horrible. It was just horrible sound. We couldn't hear each other anything. Are there any tips or tricks?
Tips or tricks? Wear a sweater. Bring lots of pillows. Okay, tips or tricks for the sound engineer if you're stuck between two concrete walls? Yes, okay. I'm gonna give you a general tip for situations in which you have a crazy reverb or crazy echo. I have worked in firehouses, bunkers, silos, wherever, places where you're in a concrete cube, you go like this, and it's like a gunshot. So what you do is you set up the whole system. Everybody's got a mic, everybody's got a monitor, speaker, whatever it is they want, and then you do the most important thing you could possibly do. You turn it off, and you don't use anything. And you listen to the band, and you see what you hear, and you ask yourself one question: what do you not hear? And you amplify only that. Because if you amplify everyone, you are sending off a bunch of gunshots in a room full of gunpowder, and it's going to get so out of hand so fast. So basically, in a room like that, what's playing to your advantage is the echo, in a way, because everyone's going to hear everything. So you don't need so much amplification. So everything off. You could literally amplify only the singer in a situation like that. Everyone's going to hear the drums. Everyone's going to hear the guitar, the bass. You don't need to amplify them. Only what you need. And don't use effects in a room like that. I mean, again, if you have years of experience and you know what you're doing and you want to try to use reverb, go for it. Fill out your will and testament and turn on the reverb. But I have never once used reverb in a room like that, and people have loved it because there's so much natural reverb. It's bouncing off the walls. You don't need reverb. So amplify only what you need. Don't use effects. That's my tips and tricks. The same applies to monitors. This is very hard to take for a lot of people. Monitors are not there so you can hear the monitors. Monitors are there so you can hear whatever you couldn't hear otherwise. And so in every show I do, the monitors are off to begin with, assuming I have time. If I don't have time, if we're running, okay, I'll turn everything on a little bit, or I will actually guess ahead of time. I know the singer's going to want to hear herself, and she's going to want the piano, and I'll guess. But if I have time for monitors, the monitors will be off. And I will ask one simple question: what do you not hear? And I will only amplify that, because they can hear from the speakers in the hall, and they can hear what's bouncing off the walls, and they can hear, because if I'm playing a flute makes sound. I can hear the flute. If I cannot hear the flute, I'll bring the flute up a little bit in the monitors. But if you start from a situation where you're amplifying everyone, what you get is a mess. And it happens very fast. And if somebody says, oh, I can't hear da-da-da-da-da, I can't hear the singer, so you turn up the singer. And then somebody else says, well, I can't hear the bass, so you turn up the bass. I can't hear the drum, you turn up the drum. I can't hear the harp, you turn up the harp. And before you know it, it's a football game. You can't hear anything because everyone is up at the top. Monitors are meant for what you cannot hear. You don't need to hear the monitor. The monitor will not be offended if you can't hear the monitor. If you can hear yourself from the speaker in the room, then you don't need the monitor. If the monitor adds things you don't need, you are messing up your sound. Only what you need. You have no idea how many problems that solves. Okay, by the way, as a musician who works as a sound engineer, when I'm on stage, I ask the sound engineer to literally turn off my monitor. And I might actually switch it myself. Why? Because it hums, it hisses, it makes noise, and 9 cases out of 10, I hear everyone just fine without the monitor. Okay, so only what you need. That's my suggestion. Okay, any other questions?
Connected to that issue of bringing people up, very often if we need to hear more of someone, the best bet is to lower everyone else.
Exactly. If someone says, I can't hear the trumpet, the first thing you do is ask yourself, who's too loud? That's the first question, always. If the balance doesn't sound good, question number 1 is, who's too loud? Because there is usually someone who is too loud, or 2 people who are too loud. The guitar takes over, all I hear is guitar. Turn down the guitar, you'll hear the trumpet. Okay? Trick number 2, and this does also apply to what Paul was asking. This is a question that kind of runs into everything. I can solve problems more cleanly using EQ if I know how to use EQ. Example, if I cannot hear the guitar, If I turn up the volume on the guitar might take over and I'll hear only guitar. I won't hear the singer anymore. But if I bring up only the 2.5 kilohertz on the guitar, or 2,500 hertz, or 3,000 hertz, or right around that point, it's also called the high mid. Also called, if I don't have all those hertz, I just bring up the mid on the guitar. What I will hear is the guitar's consonants, so to speak. I will hear the k k k of the pick, and it will help me hear the guitar without having actually raised the volume. And I will get a clean guitar addition to the sound without having raised all this guitar and created all this noise. So using EQ to solve balance problems is very good, but that's something that you learn over time. What do I need? How did I know that it was the 2.5? Well, I've been doing it for years. That's why I know. I'm giving you that tip for a guitar. 2.5 is great to hear. 2.5 or 3, you can mess with it, see what, you're probably not going to hear the difference between the two. Right around the 2.5 is going to give you a little more of that pick sound. If you're trying to hear the vocals, that's a little dangerous, but 200 gives the vocals a little presence. It's called low mid. 200 might give the vocals a little more beef. The 640 might give them a little more presence. The 2.5 will give them a little more nasal presence. It's like these frequencies that you learn to use. The other trick you can do is take the 200 out of everyone else, because then you're chopping the vocal frequencies out of the band, and that leaves this huge space for exactly where the singer is singing, because the singer's going to sing right around 200. If you want more singer, give her 200. If you want less singer, or you want more singer without giving her 200, take the 200 away from everybody else. And all of a sudden there will be this clean space and you'll hear the singer more clearly. These are kind of advanced tricks. I can say low cut does a lot to take the jumble out of a mix, and learning what frequencies help every instrument help. So for a lot of instruments, that 2.5 is going to come in handy. If I try to give you a general rule, start experimenting with 2.5, or what we call mid or high mid. That'll often solve a lot of problems. Anything else coming out of that particular question? Oh yeah, Paul?
So this is a different question, and it may be a dumb one, but I'll ask the dumb ones anyway. So if we're doing it, we have a band with singers. If we're doing an instrumental, is it worthwhile to bother muting the singers for the instrumental, or is that just not worth it?
Okay, good question. It's a very case-by-case situation. Generally speaking, I would say no. I would say don't mute them, because the chances that you will remember to mute them and have time to go, they're all back at the same time, you're probably going to miss something if you mute them. It's probably not worth it. When do I turn it off? First of all, when there's so much noise with it on that it's worth the risk. So if I'm doing sound in a synagogue, and the synagogue has a 4-story high ceiling, and it's just everything is echoing, and every kid that's in there is, whispering to their mom, and it's so much noise. Every microphone that's open in that room will add noise. And it's such an issue that it's worth the risk. And I'll turn off the ones that are not being used, and I'll take that risk. And yes, sometimes I miss it, and the rabbi starts talking, and I miss the first few words. Nuts. What can I do? But if I don't do that, no one will understand what the rabbi was saying. So, if it's a high stakes thing, then you might do that. On a stage with a band, it's hardly ever that high stakes. It's not going to make that big a difference. Leave them on. If the band stops playing and someone takes over and gives a lecture, you can turn the band off, because you're probably going to see when the band is ready to play again. But generally speaking, leave it on unless you see that it makes a big difference.
If the singer leaves the stage and the drummer is behind the singer, you want to mute it.
Example. Yeah. It's kind of a, pros versus cons situation. My go-to would be don't turn them off, not unless it makes a big difference that's worth the risk. Okay, I do see other questions. Okay, Sherry?
My question, it's about Zoom, but really not about Zoom. It's about taking the music from a computer through a mixer for Zoom, but the signal you have to turn the volume up really loud for Zoom to get it into the Zoom computer. You have a lot louder than you do to connect to a PA system.
Okay.
So do you have any tips for that? For
Um,
increasing the volume
okay, so
coming out of the computer?
similarly to other situations, this is something that someone would have to come and check your system. But here's the first thing you check. You're saying that the music is coming initially, the source is a computer, what's going into the mixer?
So the computer goes into the mixer and then out to the PA and also to the Zoom computer. And
Right.
then it's broadcast to Zoom from there. It's fine for the PA, but the volume is low going into the Zoom computer
Right.
at the mixer.
So the quick thing to check first is what you have here is a chain with a lot of components, laptop, mixer, sound interface, maybe, all that. Every single one of those has a volume knob.
Mhm.
If any one of those volume knobs is low, then the problem you're describing is going to happen. You're going to feel like, oh, wait, well, because it's 0 here, but I didn't even know there was a volume knob here. But if I turn this way up, then it compensates. You need to find all the volume knobs in your chain and make sure they're all at a healthy signal. So that's the first thing I would say. Chances are that every single one of those components has a volume knob, and some of them, as we saw, have 2, if not 3 or 4. So you have to find all the volume knobs in the chain and make sure they're all high. Other than that, get someone to look at it and tell you what's going on. Melissa.
Thank you. Our band is a trio, and we all trade off. We all play more than one instrument. So there's no one thing that any of us does. So you can't say, go, this is the vocal mic, this is the and I'm kind of
How do you?
now that I know more, I'm more confused than ever.
Right. Okay, so I am a woodwind player. I didn't say clarinet player, even though that's my main instrument, but I play a bunch of different woodwinds. As a musician who's been on stage, I already know which ones of my woodwinds are louder and which ones are softer. I know ahead of time if it's going to be too loud or too soft. And what I do is I get farther from the mic if it's going to be loud. If the mic is up, I might sing here and I might play my frula here, if at all. I might, like, if I'm going up on the high notes on a frula, I might step away from the microphone. So the more the musicians can do by themselves, based on their experience of their own instruments, the easier your life will be. That said, I can change things as I go. It's like, oh, she's playing a flute. Oh, she's playing a trumpet. Oh, she's playing a ney. Oh, she's playing an accordion. I can change things as we go. It's just going to be more work, but that's what you do. You change as you go. Um, how ideal is your situation? Does your sound engineer know you? Do they know your songs? Do they know when you're going to be playing the accordion so they can turn it down a little? Do they know when you're going to be playing the ney so they can turn it up? It's really just a bunch of different things. The other option is to have a microphone for every instrument, which I personally don't recommend. Not even in a high-end performance where you're in this big hall and it's fancy and it's luxurious and you can have 8 microphones. I've had that. I've done that. Sometimes some sound engineers want to do that, and there are advantages because then you can tailor every microphone to every instrument. But it's a little similar to what Paul was asking. You're at the risk of accidentally turning on the wrong microphone. If you leave them all on, then it's the same as having a bunch of microphones on the same person. So it's like turning the volume way up because you're picking them up 4 times instead of just once. As a musician who plays many instruments, my preference is to have one mic, and I back away from it when I'm loud and I get closer when I'm soft. That's the main tip that I would give you. Aside from trial and error, you figure it out as you go.
Another option is for the musicians to change position on stage as needed.
Right.
To have the mics assigned to an instrument rather to a musician. And then you move to the microphone.
Oh, so whoever's playing a frula plays it into this microphone. Whoever's playing trumpet, you could. That's a good idea. It's a good idea. That can help. That can certainly help. Okay. Then I don't see any other hands. Any other hands? Anybody? Going once, going twice.
I wanted to mention something about the noise discussion that we had at the beginning. Often a noise source is mechanical and is not obvious. For instance, a fan may be on and you don't hear the fan, but it's blowing on a mic, and that will cause a substantial amount of noise.
Yeah, yeah.
You have to watch for
Very
those things.
annoying things can happen, and they're hard to figure out. Sometimes your speaker is next to the television screen, and the television screen has its own hum, and it comes through the speaker. And my God, it can take you a month to figure that out. Lots of weird things can happen. So yeah, that's one of the reasons. Yeah, you know, you discover them as you go. You learn new problems. You learn to deal with new problems. Yeah. Yeah. Melissa?
So should I give up my wireless head mic, which I got because back in the days when we were playing out in the real world, sometimes I would be singing and playing with the band, and sometimes I'm the one who goes out into the middle of the room and gets people started or shows them a dance, which means that I'm, it's nice to have a mic when I'm trying to tell a room full of people how to do the dance, and then I can go back and now I'm hearing maybe that head mic isn't
Well,
such a great idea.
it's a pro versus con thing. The situation you're describing, my thought is have it, keep it off when you're on the stage, turn it on when you go down to show people the dance, and turn it back off when you get back on the stage, for example. Because yeah, it sounds like it's worth it when you're showing people the dance. You need it. It's worth it. It's pro versus con. If it's worth it, do it. Anybody else? Okay. I want to say thank you.
Yeah, coming up on 3 hours. Thank you. I mean, the thanks really is to you, Asaf. Not to belabor it, we've over an hour more than we had intended, but again, just so much great information. Thank you again.
Sure.
Thank you, Asaf. It was nice to meet you.
Thanks, everybody.
Ciao for now.